Hey guys, welcome to the Fish North Georgia podcast, where we talk about everything fishing here in North Georgia. Guys, we got a great episode in store for you today. Our guest today absolutely blew me away with some of the knowledge that he was willing to share. We're going to discuss some of these North Georgia reservoirs that are electric only, like Yahoola, Cedar Creek, Latham. We're going to talk about boat setups. We're going to talk about equipment. We're going to talk about tactics. And the guy that's going to be helping us today is Shane Dover of Dover Fishing Adventures. Shane's been a constant on the tournament trail the last few years. He's a local angler. Currently, he is helping run a fall-winter series. And so, guys, let's get right into it, and I hope you enjoy it. And we really appreciate you coming out here and doing this.
Hey, I appreciate what you guys are doing for North Georgia, for our sport of fishing and to showcase our rivers and streams and lakes here in North Georgia. That's awesome.
Well, that's the plan. That's the plan. We hope to grow this and create a big family.
Right.
A big family of outdoorsmen and fishermen and everything. So we appreciate you. So how we want to get started is this. I want you to kind of tell everybody out there, our listeners, those tuning in, a little bit about Shane Dover, who you are, what you're about, where you've come from, and I'm just going to sit back and listen for a little bit.
All right. Sounds good. Well, I'm 46 years old. I'm born and raised right here in North Georgia. Spent most of my youth fishing a lot of the rivers and streams up around like Blairsville and all over North Georgia, really fishing for trout mostly. And didn't really fish too much for bass when I was growing up, but did a lot of trout fishing, cat fishing, just the streams of North Georgia, man, I wore them out, riverbanks. So when I was in high school, decided to join the Marine Corps. Joined the Marines in the 11th grade through the delayed entry program at North Hall High School, where I graduated from.
Let's stop right there. North Hall, huh?
Yes, sir.
North Hall. Now, Dawson and North Hall are supposed to be rivals, right?
They are.
Well, the crazy thing is we normally are, but my son, which graduated from Dawson, is currently dating a girl from North Hall.
Oh, smart man.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but we'll see. But I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go on.
No, it's perfectly fine, yeah. All three of my children graduated from North Hall, so family tradition there.
I got you.
But so I went in the Marine Corps 2 weeks after high school, went to Parris Island for my boot camp, ended up stationed in Annapolis, Maryland at the U.S. Naval Academy at Marine Barracks Annapolis, which was pretty neat. I mean, one of the reasons that I joined the Marine Corps was kind of to help me improve myself as an outdoorsman. I know that sounds weird, but if you can make it through Marine Corps boot camp and you go through all the training to become a Marine, it improves your ability to be a great outdoorsman,
I agree with that.
So I ended up getting injured while I was there. I got a medical discharge and met my wife in Maryland, kind of stayed up there, did some odd and end jobs. And I wanted to get in with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and become a conservation officer. And I worked at that for a little while and just ended up having 3 children, twin girls and a son. And with the travel and everything with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, it was going to be tough to raise a family like that. So ended up just, doing some local work, maintenance type work up there, and got hooked up with a neighbor who bass fished religiously, loved it. And it kind of ignited my fire again for bass fishing. I had done some as a youth, like local farm ponds and stuff like that, but it really wasn't something that was big around here back then. I mean, I remember that when I was little, one of the big things about Lake Lanier was they would have tagged like crappie, crappie, however you want to pronounce it.
We're going to say crappie here.
Yeah,
we're going to say crappie
right
here. So yeah, what's that? Jimmy Houston says crappie or something. Yeah,
exactly.
We're going to go with crappie here.
And they had the tag crappie in Lake Lanier, and it was a huge thing. Everybody was fishing, Wahoo, all the different places trying to catch these tag crappie. And I did a lot of crappie fishing, and so didn't really, other than farm ponds and stuff, wasn't really in bass fishing. Just wasn't that big. It was mostly back when I was growing up, trout, crappie, catfish. Stripers were coming along in the lake. Some folks were fishing for striper, but once I met up with my friend up in Maryland, Jeff Holtzclaw, he just reignited, man. He taught me so much, mentored me really about bass fishing. And in Maryland, there's a lot of, of course, the Potomac River's up there. We fish that a lot. But there's also a lot of electric-only reservoirs in Maryland. Rocky Gorge and Triadelphia are the main two where I live near in Laurel, Maryland area. And, man, that setting of the electric-only and him teaching me about catching fish, fishing jigs, fishing different lures, really sparked a fire about bass fishing, and been hooked ever since, man. So stayed up in Maryland for a while. In 2005, my dad got diagnosed with cancer, so I moved back home to Georgia to help take care of him and my mom, and so he passed away, and I moved my family back down here or down to Georgia and got them enrolled in school and everything. And so, yeah, from there, man, a few years went by, and I kind of didn't really, my dad passing away kind of took a lot out of me wanting to get out, and do the outdoors kind of stuff. And so a few years went by, and I met another guy at work, that was another guy who was really into bass fishing and hunting and everything. So he and I became good friends. And he knew a lot about, fishing here in Georgia, a lot of different reservoirs and stuff that while I was going to Maryland is when the Yahoola Reservoir in Dahlonega was being built. So I didn't get an opportunity to fish it in the very beginning, of its early stages. And so, yeah, he helped me get out of my little shell there, and get back into fishing. And we started fishing some tournaments and local stuff and got into the electric John boat deal. And I fished a couple of tournaments with FLW through the BFL series here on Lanier. And it's been wide open ever since.
I hear you. That's great. Let's talk about a couple of things that you brought up. Mm-hmm. First of all, you grew up trout fishing.
Right.
So I want to know, are you a fly fishing guy or are you a spinner guy?
Man, I tried fly fishing when I was up in Maryland. It's one of the things, it's big up there. Fly fishing's really big. I tried it, and I wanted to learn it, but man, it's tough.
It's not easy.
It is not easy.
It's an art form.
It is.
It's an art form.
It's a true skill to be a successful fly fisherman.
I am a spinner guy myself for the same reason. You give me the little yellow Panther Martin with the red dot on it and just let me throw it on a spin reel and I'm good. What's your earliest memory of fishing?
Earliest memory would probably be when I was, a toddler, I'm guessing 5-6 years old. We would go to some of the local farm ponds around. A lot of folks around this end, this part of the state have chicken farms and cattle, and so they would have little small ponds, on their property, but they would be just full of catfish.
Right. Yep.
And as a little kid, man, my dad would take me, or my brothers would take me, and just sit there on the bank with some chicken livers and old pantyhose, and cast them things out there. And man, it was just fun, to catch them like that.
Can you remember catching your first trout?
Yeah, I can remember. It was at Notley River up in Blairsville. We used to go camping up there religiously at every chance we could get. My parents had a lot of friends, that we all camped in a big group, and everybody went trout fishing and floating down the river, and that was my first real trout fishing experience was up there.
I got you. How about so from there, basically you grew up in outdoors fishing, stuff like that, doing all that stuff. And like you said, bass fishing wasn't popular. Do you remember when you first started bass fishing? When you were being taught with a fellow at Maryland, you said, what was his name again?
Jeff Holtzclaw.
Jeff Holtzclaw. So when you and Jeff got together, and he's teaching you about bass, were you live bait fishing, or was he teaching you,
No, it was artificial. Yeah, Jeff was, I can't remember what circuits he's fished. He's fished some very popular circuits up in Maryland and was very successful. So it was all artificial to him. We never did use live bait. And, so, yeah, I mean, you know, I'd always watched on TV like Bill Dance and Jimmy Houston and a lot of those guys, you know, growing up. And something I always wanted to do, but, you know, it just, in my family and my circle of friends, it just wasn't something that they did.
Right.
I mean, you know, we hunted a lot, went deer hunting a lot, and turkey hunting, but bass fishing it just wasn't something, you know, that was popular, I guess you say at the time.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, Jeff taught me a lot about the sport, you know, a lot about different lures, just a lot in general about bass behavior and weather conditions, water clarity, the whole 9 yards, different colors to use, and different presentations. And it, you know, from there, I took that knowledge and just kept reaching for more knowledge, you know, any way I could find it. If I could read about it, watch a video, just listening to people talk, you know, around fishing, bass fishing shops, anything, just as much knowledge as I could possibly gain. And, is really what got me here today.
Right.
Much, yeah.
It's definitely changed since, back then compared to now. I can remember ordering from the Bass Pro Shop catalog and waiting for it to come in.
Right.
You know, you didn't go to the store.
There wasn't a store, no.
There wasn't a store back then. And I remember getting the catalogs and opening it up and just wishing I had this and this and this, but you could only afford one of those. And it'd be, you know, do you remember the first time you ever tried and what brand bait caster you ever threw? And I asked that for a reason.
It was a Bass Pro Shops Mega Cast.
Mega Cast. Yeah. Okay.
I believe it was a Mega Cast.
How'd you do?
Awful. That was one thing. My friend Jeff, bait caster all day long. He's the one that got me introduced to it. I was always a spinning reel guy.
Right.
I mean, from trout fishing, we've always fished with a spinning reel. So any type fishing I did was with a spinning reel.
Right. And that's where I was going with it. Yeah.
And he's bait caster guy. His boat's loaded with bait casters, you know, and he's like, oh, once you get used to using them, you know, you'll never want to go back. I tried and I don't know if he did it intentionally by not showing me how to do the adjustments or whatnot, because he enjoyed the humor of watching me try to fish this thing.
Right, absolutely.
So I tried, and it took forever. It took a lot of research, you know, before I could get proficient at it.
I remember we had just moved up to Cumming, Georgia, and I want to say it was a Kmart. It might have been a Walmart at that time, but I think it was a Kmart. Saving up $20 and going and buying a bait caster because my friends had one.
Right.
I was a Zebco 33 guy.
Oh, yeah.
That's all my dad would use.
Yep.
It didn't matter what you were throwing. You threw it on a Zebco 33. And it was a little Ryobi. You know, I don't even know if Ryobi makes fishing stuff anymore, but at that time it was a little cheap black Ryobi.
Yeah.
And cheap being the word, and backlash and going through line like crazy, you know. Yeah. It's amazing how far reels have come since back then too.
It's unbelievable. Yeah.
I won't talk about the time because I think this is important too. You had talked about, you know, you get the news about your father, and so you move back home. And I know this is a touchy subject, but I've walked this walk, so I understand what you're going through. And you're talking about after your father passed away, there was a period of time you didn't feel like fishing.
No.
And so, you know, let's just kind of what got you. I mean, you know, tell everybody how that feels, because there's a lot of people that haven't gone through that.
Yeah.
And there's those of us that I know exactly what you're talking about.
Well, for a lot of us, you know, our fathers got us into the outdoors. But, right. I mean, that's the way it was with mine. My dad had a lot of friends who were Vietnam veterans and hunted and fished, and we had some property down in South Georgia that we had a little hunting club on. So, you know, as a child growing up, I grew up with adults pretty much. Right. You know, I hunted with them. We went fishing with all his circle of friends. So, you know, he got me into it. So anytime I went hunting, I was usually with my dad. He would take me fishing. So it was something that he and I bonded with. And even if I was away up in Maryland, you know, I could call him and say, hey, Dad, you know, I'm going hunting over, you know, I saw this nice buck on trail camera, and I'm going to go try to get, you know, and I always knew he was there. He was rooting for me, pulling for me.
Right.
And, And when he passed, it was just hard. It just wasn't the same, you know. Go hunting, you just kind of felt like you had an emptiness inside of you, or to go fishing, it was kind of an emptiness. And it took a long time, you know, for that to kind of get over that. And you never really get over it. It's something always there. You know, I still feel like at times he's there with me. You know, he's kind of watching, pulling for me, rooting me on. And
Gotcha.
So.
Yeah, no, I say that because I've experienced something very similar. Now, my father, he died of cancer. And so I've been through that walk. But it was my father-in-law that was actually the man that taught me how to hunt, because I didn't start hunting until later in life. You know, my dad always let me fish, but for some reason he didn't like to hunt.
Yeah.
When I met my wife, her dad was all about hunting. So hunting and fishing for however many years I knew him before he passed away, it was with him.
Right.
And then I can remember, you know, we had just got through a deer season where he had killed 2 10-pointers off my lease, one of the best deer seasons, and we were just happy. And that February, he had a heart attack.
Oh, wow.
And dead.
Yeah.
And, you know, my wife took it so hard. And as a man, we have to be strong. You know, we're the ones that's supposed to be, you know, the supporter and let everybody lean on us. And I find oftentimes men don't get to grieve it like you know, others do, especially those that have fathers that, or father-in-laws, you know, or some mentor that takes them outside.
Right.
So I can remember, you know, going through that situation, and then we come up to the summer and it's time to fish. And all of a sudden you don't feel like fishing no more. And so you say, well, it's just this. And you make every excuse in the world not to go. And then here comes the fall. All right, now it's time to go deer hunting.
Right.
And you just don't feel like doing it.
Yeah.
And I know exactly. It took me probably 4 or 5 years to finally get the enjoyment of hunting and fishing again. Because that's the way we men sometimes grieve. You know, we can't cry. We're supposed to, they tell us we can, but you know, you can't. And so when you told me that earlier, I was like, you know, I've walked that walk, I know. And I know there's lots of people that will listen to this that will know exactly what we're talking about. You know, it's just, that's one of the toughest things, especially with family.
Yeah.
Especially with family that grow. There's something about, you know, the outdoors that creates a bond, you know, with people.
Is. Yeah.
And it's a whole, and you're right. You never really get over it. You kind of turn it a little bit and say, okay, you know, Bill was my father-in-law's name. I see a big buck out here and, you know, or something, a deer, and I shoot him. Yeah, Bill was watching me. Bill was, you know,
exactly.
And that's how you kind of do it. So, you know, I appreciate you sharing that. But that's the reason and that I bring it up, is because I think guys need to understand that that's just how some people grieve.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like that. So, but man, I really appreciate you, you know, being able to share and open up with that. So, because that's tough. It's not easy to talk about sometimes like that.
No, it's not.
So, but you know, thank you for doing that. So let's now let's turn to the fishing.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the fishing. So, we're going to talk about you specific first, and then we'll get into some other things. So, what kind of fisherman is Shane Dover? What do you consider yourself? Are you a finesse guy? Are you a power guy? Can you do both? Do you like one over the other? I mean, what are you?
Well, I feel like I can do both, and I try to do both. A lot of guys say I'm more of a finesse fisherman who's fished with me. I feel like I'm more of a power fisherman.
Right. Every time I've seen you in a tournament, you're beating the bank with a spinnerbait or something like that. Yep. So for you to say finesse, I'm like, oh, you know, okay, I didn't know that.
Right. So, yeah, a lot of guys that fish with me say I fish too slow. That you know, that there's certain times of the year when you just can't fish that slow. But I feel like I'm versatile at both. And really and truthfully, you have to be to be competitive.
That's true. That's true. That's why I never win.
Yeah.
That's seriously. I'm always donating money. Okay, so finesse. Mm-hmm. What is finesse to you?
To me, finesse it's changing a little bit because you're getting a lot of newer style baits, a lot of like Ned rig type baits. It's finesse. Also, downsizing. You know, used to Carolina rig, nobody would really consider it as too much of a finesse type bait. But now I see a lot of guys, and even myself, is throwing like a Carolina rig with finesse baits on them, lighter line, slower presentation, and getting bit. I mean, catching some good fish like that.
Well, for those that may not know, explain a Carolina rig.
A Carolina rig is where you have like a braided line main line from your reel, and you go down to like an egg style sinker with usually a bead and to a swivel, and then you have a leader anywhere from as long as you want it. I mean, 12 inches up to 2 feet, ever how long you want your leader. And, you know, you usually tie like just a worm type hook or an extra wide gap hook on the end, and use a finesse bait, or, you know, a lot of guys use lizard type bait or any kind of worm, whatever, and just basically drag that thing along the bottom until you get bit.
So basically, you keep in contact with the bottom.
Right. Your egg sinker will keep contact with the bottom, and then you've got your bait that's just kind of free floating behind that egg sinker. So it's a little different than like a Texas rig type presentation, and get a lot more bites that way sometimes too.
So that's what you would consider finesse these days.
Yeah, there's a way to fish that Carolina rig finesse. You know, there's also a power bait way, or I'm sorry, a power style fishing to a Carolina rig too. But a lot of those finesse baits is like a Ned rig, using like a wacky worm, a weightless wacky worm type setup. I use that a lot. And
a wacky worm being
like a 5-inch Cinco type bait, stick bait. Lanier Baits makes a nice one. It's called a 5-inch stick. They've also got a 4 and a 3-inch stick, but they're usually not salted because a salted soft plastic will sink really fast. I prefer to use one that isn't salted because it has more buoyancy and it sinks slower. So when you're fishing that stick worm finesse style, it's super slow. Because you want that bass to come up and look at that stick worm. And
what kind of action are we presenting?
It's kind of a fluttering type action as it falls.
Gotcha.
Because wacky rig, you hook it right in the center of that worm. So with a light wire hook, like a 1/0 to a 1/0 type hook, and when you cast that thing out, it just kind of slowly sinks, and it has this little twitch quiver to it as it's falling,
kind of like something dying as it goes down. Is that okay? Yep. I got you.
And it can be fished around cover. It's kind of hard because you're going to get hung up a lot. But I mean, they've got so many different styles now of hooks where you can get the weedless type keeper on the hook. Plus, there's a lot of tons of different ways to fish that stick worm in general. From like a Nico rig where you stick a weight in the end of it, where one end of it falls faster, and it maintains contact with the bottom, but you can still work it like a finesse bait where you're just barely moving this worm across the bottom versus having it free fall. But those are some of the finesse types techniques that I use, baits and stuff.
Now, are you big into the Ned rig? Because that's the one thing I've been able to catch fish on, but that's kind of a relatively new, term.
It's something I'm working on. It's one of my weaknesses because, man, from what I've seen, you have to throw that stuff on that on some really light line,
yes,
like some 4 to 6 pound test, fluorocarbon and just for me, when I get bit, I want to set the hook, and I've broke off so many hooks on the Ned rig.
Yeah, well, one of the things they say about a Ned rig too is that on a true Ned rig hook,
right? Ones
that are made the light wire like you described.
Yep.
And if you really try to hoss a fish in, you're gonna bend it out. It's gonna bend the hook, and also you've got to. You really can't set the hook.
No,
you kind of just have to raise that rod into it.
Like a slow sweeping, or even reel into it type action.
Exactly. Yeah. But like you also said too, if you're going to fish a Ned rig, you might as well go ahead and get it in your mind to buy extra hooks. You're going to get hung.
You're going to.
I've had some pretty good luck with it on Latham.
Yeah.
When the spots are hitting. The spots are hit up much more aggressively, and only on certain parts of the lake. And later on in this podcast, when we talk about Latham, we can kind of talk about that. But, let's go to this. your favorite setup that's in your boat right now, favorite rod and reel combo, what is it?
It's got to be a jig. My buddy Jeff, that was his biggest thing, fishing a jig. He said a jig will catch fish year round, and he's true. That statement's hold true for me. My favorite setup is I have a 7-foot Ducket Silverado, and that's rigged with an Abu Garcia Revo S, and I use 15 to 20 pound either Cigar or Berkeley Vanish fluorocarbon, and I use Georgia blade jigs. There's Georgia jigs. That's the only I've tried so many different jigs. I started out getting my jigs at like Walmart, and
Right.
And the problems I would have was, the rubber band they use on skirt material would just deteriorate over time. Skirts would fall apart. Hooks would get dull. The paint would come off the heads just after a couple of casts, And once I got to meet Mike and Pam Shepard, the owners of Georgia Blade, they're just some really super awesome people, man. I mean, it's just the talent that they have for making their baits, their jigs, spinner baits. They have a whole lineup of lures that they make, and the confidence it's given me to know that I'm using something that's made right here in North Georgia, Dawsonville, Georgia, handmade by these folks, and it's a jig. That's it for me. I love fishing a jig.
Let me tell you a crazy story that actually just happened today.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we have found out that the owners of Georgia Blade
Right.
are actually Josh's sister-in-law's uncle.
Wow.
We just found that out today.
Small world,
It's a small world. And actually, they live right down the road.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we did not know that. And what's funny is Josh called me up before we headed over here to the studio, and he said, got a crazy story for you. And he said, when we first started fishing North Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
Josh's mother-in-law said, well, you need to talk to, and I think it's Brandy, that's his sister-in-law.
Right.
I think it's Brandy, but you need to talk to Brandy's uncle. She's got an uncle that makes lures.
Oh yeah.
And Josh kind of, yeah, okay, and he just, in his mind, he's thinking of a guy in a basement that does one or two, lures a day, kind of that kind of thing. And so never pursued it. And he's going to kill me for telling this on there. But we never talked much about it. And then today, knowing that you were coming, and then there was a post on Facebook that they were giving out the stickers and the decals, and mm-hmm. I sent them a text and got to talking to them, and very nice people, just like you said.
Oh, yeah.
And I told Josh about it, and I said, we're gonna try to do some work with these people down the road and everything. And I said, you need to send your address and get you some of these free stickers and all that they're giving out. And he did, and then he hit him up on Facebook. I think he was going to message him on Facebook.
Right.
And you know how it shows friends?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden there pops up his sister-in-law.
Oh.
And he's like, well, why does my sister-in-law know, the owner of Georgia Blade? And then he was able to put two and two together and all that like that. So very small world, like that. But I've heard great things about their products too.
Yeah.
So, and I know from following you over the last year or so like that, you're big on Georgia Blade.
I'm big on Georgia Blade.
Anytime you do a report, it's Georgia Blade, and it's that. So, jig's your favorite bait.
Yep.
All right. What is your least favorite thing to try to fish? You're in a tournament, nothing's working, you're throwing everything, and it's the very last thing you're going to pull out of that tackle box.
Well, I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this, but I'm going to redeem myself, hopefully, next Sunday.
All right.
This coming Sunday, as a matter of fact. But it's a drop shot.
Drop shot, yeah.
And as crazy as that sounds, man, I mean, it's probably one of the most simplest setups to fish, but I've had such a hard time with a drop shot.
I can't do it either.
And so one of my sponsors is James Harmon, Lanier Jim with Lanier Baits.
Right.
And he is a drop shot expert. I mean, that hands down. And so I'm fortunate enough to get to go out on a trip with him this coming Sunday, the 20th. So I told him, I said, you got to teach me your ways. I mean, I've got to know how to,
And what's his Facebook page again?
It is Lanier Baits, is what is their Facebook page, and his personal page is James L.J. Harmon.
And he's always showing pictures, though, of fish that he's catching and stuff like that.
He guides on Lake Lanier.
Guides, yes, right.
And man, he catches some giants out there on that drop shot year round. I mean, drop shots, spy bait, shaky heads, and they have a great line of soft plastic lures. And one of the things, like I mentioned earlier about their stick baits, is they don't impregnate the baits with salt. So even the drop shot weights, the stick baits, the swim baits, none of them, they're all buoyant, and that's big in a lot of setups, a lot of situations where you don't want a bait that's just going to sink straight to the bottom because it's got a bunch of salt in it. If you want that extra action, it's nice to have that.
This is Lanier baits.
It is Lanier baits.
Now, is this the fruity worm guy?
It's the fruity worms. Fruity worms rule.
That's what I hear. Well, I don't throw a drop shot either, so I don't know. So when you learn, you need to show me, because I know on many of these lakes that we fish, that sometimes I separate some men from the boys, being able to be able to do that drop shot when things get tough.
Yeah.
In fact, we had somebody we've got a tournament coming up, and that Josh and I are going to do, and someone gave us, I guess you could say, a little info on how to fish it, and one of the ways was drop shot. And I'm like, man, I throw the Ned rig. Yeah. I have confidence in the Ned rig.
Right.
Drop shot, I just, you can keep that Ned rig, I can feel that Ned rig on the bottom and just drag it. Yeah. But you stick a weight below a worm, first of all, I can't tie a Palomar knot or whatever it is. I can't ever get my hook right. My hook's always up, down.
Yeah, so sideways, when you twist.
That's what I need to learn how. Teach me how to get my hook straight. But, I can't feel, for some reason, the bottom, and I know you kind of hopping on the bottom of that weight and that warms up a little bit. I just can't feel it like I can a Ned rig. I don't know why, but I know some guys that can,
Yeah.
So,
the technique of it is what I can't get. I mean, I get the gist of it, how to do it. I mean, find the fish on your sonar, on your graph, and just drop down on them and wiggle the bait in front of them. But of course, there's more to it than that.
Right.
But my tendency is just want to sit there and just shake the worm back and forth, right, and hoping that something's going to grab it.
And the fish are looking at it like, what's wrong with that one right there,
what's
man?
wrong with that worm's having spasms or something.
I get it. I totally get it. So you brought something up right there that I want to ask you about too, because we both fish these electric only things. Mm-hmm. Now I know when you see the pros and they're out there on their bass boats and they're fishing, they're almost playing some video games these days with these big sonars and stuff like that. And God bless them. You got the money to spend on that. But a lot of that is coming into the electric only thing. So what's funny to me is I see a guy with a $2,000 boat and a $2,500 graph sitting on the front of it, something like that. Yeah. So what do you use? What kind of setup do you use?
Currently, I just have a Garmin 7 on my bow, and then I have a little Humminbird 5-inch 2D sonar at the console for my co-angler. But mine does down imaging, side imaging, and 2D sonar, and it's okay. It's not the top of the line. Like I can't zoom in and tell you how many rocks are on the bottom like some of these guys can, but it's good enough to pretty much I can find fish on it.
Right.
One thing that's a big somebody looking to get into it. One recommendation I would make. Since a lot of these electric-only reservoirs, there is no map chip. You can't go buy a Lake Master chip and stick it in there and have all your weight, your contours.
Right.
So a lot of the, like Garmin 7 Plus, I believe it is, and I believe Humminbird has some, that does quick contour mapping. It takes a minute, but you can literally go in circles around the reservoir, and this thing will create a contour map of where you've been on that reservoir. And it's a huge help, especially determining depths and points and humps and stuff like that. You can do different shading and find all this stuff right there on your graph, and it saves a ton of time as far as just, having a map for that lake.
And that's a good point. And, on most of these reservoir lakes, you can do that with a few batteries and a few trips, like that. Unless you fish... What is it? Hard labor down around Social Circle. That thing is an absolute monster. Have you been there yet?
I haven't yet. No, I haven't made it that far. I wanted to, but I don't know if I have enough batteries.
Listen, Josh and I went down there and we did a little film work when they had the TEC.
Right.
And for those of us, the Georgia TEC is the Total Electric Championship. And it's basically 5, 6 clubs. I don't remember exactly how many. But
I think they added a couple more last year, made it around 5 or 6.
Yeah. The top 4 anglers in some of the bigger clubs and the better-known clubs in North Georgia, at the end of their points year and all that, if you're the top 4, you qualify to go down there, and basically it's one big fishing tournament. So I've been hearing about this lake, and Josh and I, we got invited to go down there and do a little film work. So we get in the boat, and that thing is a monster. And I think, Hickory Log and Latham's pretty big.
Yes.
They're nothing.
Oh, I know.
They're a cove. When you go down an electric-only lake and you see a paved road that just runs into the lake and disappears.
Right.
Because they just flooded it back. And you go on a little bit farther, and it's just like going across Carter's Lake or something. Here's a bridge.
Right.
And we ain't talking about a culvert. We're talking about a bridge, just going across, and you're like, and, some of these guys got these great batteries and these great things, and we don't.
No.
And we're trying to film guys that we can't find, and we're like, well, it's kind of windy. I don't know if we need to go on over here. We'll never make it back.
Right.
I think
long way to paddle.
I think it's 2,000 acres.
Yeah.
Something like that.
It's huge.
But what you said, if you had a map and okay, so it's this time of the year, the fish are going to be holding in this, and you could look on that,
narrow it down,
so like that. So that's actually really, really good advice. I hadn't thought about that. So for somebody that's just wanting to get in it, let's just say we got a guy that's never fished an electric only tournament, decides, okay, I want to get into this. I don't want to put a ton of money into it right yet until I decide whether I like it.
Right.
Kind of give a little bit of a feel on what kind of boat you would look for. Just, we're going to talk a cheap setup. We're not talking about building one out. We're just talking about a good, cheap setup. What kind of suggestions would you give someone?
Well, personally, knowing now, what I've known, experience I've had in it, I would look for say a 1448 type aluminum John boat. Those seem to handle the water good. You can seem to get the most speed out of them. They're real stable. I wouldn't go much narrower than that because then you get a lot of balance issues. If you got a partner who's fishing with you, it can kind of be unstable. So something along those lines is what I'd look for if I was starting out. And then, you can, even if it's as long as it doesn't leak, you can do so many different things as far as putting decks on them, platforms to fish out of, building in your own live well system. To give a plug to a friend of mine, Brett with Decked Out John Boats, man, they've got some great information, some great guys on there who have done bills for relatively inexpensive. I mean, just stuff you can go get at the hardware store and make some nice platforms and all to fish off your boat. That a lot of guys will find an old, say, bass boat. That's what I've got. I've got an older model Stratus bass boat. Things completely gutted. I rewired everything to match what my needs were, but took the fuel tanks and all out. Fortunately for me, my live wells and everything still worked. But I picked up the boat for $200. The transom's kind of bad, but it doesn't leak.
Right.
Good enough to hold electric trolling motors on the back and the trolling motor on the front. The only downfall to that is it's heavy.
Right.
You got all that fiberglass and the insulation, everything. The boat's heavy. So speed-wise, I can't get that much, that great out of it unless I go with a high dollar motors. But comfort, fishing out of a bass boat's the way to go.
Absolutely. And I agree with that. Absolutely. It's funny you say speed. So for anybody listening, there are blast-offs in a professional bass tournament, and then there are blast-offs in an electric-only tournament. A blast-off in an electric-only tournament, the faster boats would probably be about like a 2 or 3 year old toddler starting to walk as they run across a room or something like that. They may hit 7 miles an hour tops if they got the good motors like that, 6. And then there's, guys like Josh and I, and with the wind to our back and every motor we got on, 3.6 miles per hour, and we think we're doing great. We think we're doing great. And we watch it, and as we we start off at 3.6, and then we get into a wind coming right at us, and we're down to 2.9, and we watch that battery. So
exactly.
But you're right with it being heavy and the speed that you are. But after fishing 5, 6, 7 hours, I can see where the deck of a bass boat.
Oh yeah.
Has, especially with the raised chair, definitely is going to outweigh an aluminum boat, with a small seat.
Right.
And as you get older, like, some of us are, the joints at the end of the day, they take a beating.
Exactly.
Even on an electric only. Like, I come home after, and I'm just like, I hit the couch after one of these tournaments, and I'm dying.
Yeah.
And my wife is like, seriously?
You've
and I'm
just
like,
been fishing all day.
You've just been fishing all day. I'm like, do you realize how many casts I made?
Exactly.
And do you realize how many times I walk back and forth in that boat? They have no pity.
No,
they don't care
they
like
don't.
that. Like that. Yeah. So we kind of got what kind of fisherman you are, what you kind of like to do. So we're going to talk about 3 lakes. Okay. And I picked these 3 lakes out for a reason.
Right.
Number 1, because I know you like them.
Yeah.
I know you've got experience on them. And 2 of the 3 lakes is because I'm terrible on. And that way I can pick up some pointers right here. And I hope you will be willing to share some pointers to not only me, but those out that's going to listen to this.
Sure.
So let's start off with the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I call it Yahoola Reservoir.
Right.
Its proper name is Lake Zwerner.
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 Right.
Now, who is Zwerner?
I don't know. I always heard it called Yahoola, and then I got looking up on Google Maps one day, and it said Lake Zwerner, and that was my question: who's Zwerner? I mean, I'm sure it says probably maybe somebody who used to own the land, or a famous person of Dahlonega, but it's known as Yahoola Reservoir, Dahlonega Lake, Lake Zwerner. It's got a bunch of different names, but
for those of you who do not know this lake, it is a smaller lake.
It is.
It is just outside of downtown Dahlonega, Georgia. It's on 60. Is it 60 there or 19? Is it still 19?
I believe that would be 19 right there.
19 right there.
Just south of what would that be? North of the Walmart?
See, that's what I was going to say. Everything is judged in the town by the Walmart.
Walmart, right.
So if you go to the Walmart in Dahlonega and you keep on driving down the hill past it about a half a mile, you can't miss it. It's going to be on your right. I would say it's less than 100 acres. Do you think it's even that much? Is it that big?
Yeah. Well,
at full pool.
Yeah, at full pool. I forget what it was. I'd have to look it up, but I believe it's a little over 100 acres. Yeah.
If it is, it ain't much.
It ain't much.
It ain't much. And kind of describing this lake to our listeners, there's some structure. Mm-hmm. There's some structure in the lake. I know when they originally flooded it, it had a lot of brush and stuff in it, but I think some of that is since probably decayed and died down. It's a shallow lake for the most part.
Yep.
I would say that the average depth of it would be, maybe 10 foot at most around the lake, 10, 20 foot, in the middle?
Yeah, you can get out. I think the old channel is around 25 to 26 foot deep out in the middle, and then it kind of tapers back from 20 on up to 10 foot, 8 foot. A lot. It's kind of neat. There's a lot of like spawning flats that's 4 to 5 foot deep, and some couple of long points that start out super shallow and go out to about 18 feet. So
I got you. An interesting feature. There's 2 to me interesting features on this lake. One is the aerators. Mm-hmm. Okay, so, and I'm not sure if I know the story, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I was told that, especially during the summertime, the water doesn't get the oxygen in it that it needs to support. Right. And so they built these man-made aerators, 4, 5, or 6 of them like that in the lake.
Yeah, they're solar powered.
Solar powered that basically is a fan, kind of just to stir the water up, right. I guess. Now, is that correct? Is that what you heard? It is,
yeah.
So you have those, and also Yahoola Creek. Mm-hmm. You can kind of go out of the lake back under the road, and you get back into this creek, and it's a favorite place of a lot of people, especially if you're fishing a tournament. It gets kind of crowded back in there.
It does.
I have seen some guys go way on back into the next bridge and beyond when the water's up to do it.
That'd be me.
That would be you. So my experience on Yahoola is you can catch numbers, but you can't catch size. Now, I have seen fish. Now, listen, I've seen pictures of them.
Yeah.
Of people catching decent fish.
Right.
I've seen a few, actually seen a few with my own eyes. I have heard that in the wintertime, you can actually go catch a massive sack, 5 fish limit if you get on them.
Yep.
And I've even heard stories of 20-pound stringers, 5 fish stringers.
That's true.
In this lake. I've never experienced it. So what am I doing wrong?
Well, it's gone downhill since those days, unfortunately.
Overfished?
Overfished and people taking fish from the lake.
Gotcha.
A lot of guys, a lot of folks take them, have them mounted. A lot of folks catch them, take them back to their farm pond. So they're there. Some friends of mine had told me that DNR came out and did a shock study here a while back and said it's full of 10-pounders. It's got a ton of 10-pounders in it. I haven't caught a 10-pounder out there. The biggest one I've caught is 8, and it was about a little over a month ago.
Yeah, I saw a picture of that fish. That's one of the ones I'm talking about.
I've caught some 6s, some 5s. I mean, I've caught a lot of good fish out there. They're there. I've seen them. I've seen them during bed season. I've actually seen them when I've caught a smaller fish and I'm fighting it to the boat, and there'll be a 6 to 10, whatever it was, pounder chasing this fish that I'm trying to reel in, and it's after it like it's gonna eat it.
Right.
And so you just see this big mouth coming after your fish, and this happened to me earlier this year, and I saw it. And I just jerked the fish that I was fighting in the boat real quick because I was like, what in the world? And then it dawned on me, I should have let him eat it.
Right. Yes, you might have got that hook into him.
Yeah. But they're there. There's some there. I mean, it's not like it used to. I haven't been fishing Yahoola but about 4 years now. And I know prior to that, I'm guessing maybe 10 years back, I've got a lot of friends that have fished it since its birth of being a reservoir, and they would tell me it was nothing to go out there and catch 10-pounders, 10-pounders. It was nothing. Every day you go out there, you're going to catch some good bass. And I've seen pictures. Some of my friends have some pictures from 10 years ago, just giants, just unbelievable. Because I heard that they stocked it with the Florida strain, the F1 strain bass, which get huge. But one of my things was I never see a lot of shad in that lake. I mean, other than just what naturally flows in from the creek.
Right.
So food source wise, there's not a lot of food source out there to sustain a large population of 10-pound bass.
Right.
So I think that could have had a lot of effect on why you're not seeing the big numbers like you used to, along with the fishing pressure, because, you got college up there. You got college kids that do a lot of fishing, canoeing, and stuff like that. Tournaments, I mean, all the tournaments are catch and release, and but you still got a lot of guys. We see a lot of folks fishing from the bank, catching whatever they catch and putting them in a bucket and taking them home.
Right.
And a lot of that, they don't pay attention to legal length limits and stuff. And I think that has had a lot to do with, you take a lot of big females out of a lake like that, and it's not going to take long till it's,
right. Especially on one that size.
Right.
And I wonder, I always heard, maybe you've heard this too, because I don't know, that before the silt filled in, there's a lot of silt.
Yes.
There was a lot of trout in Yahoola Creek.
Yes.
So is it possible that as they flooded it back, those early fish got the gorge on trout?
Oh, I'm sure they did. Yeah.
I personally have never caught a trout, and I've never seen one there, but people tell me that they were there.
Yes.
I find it a little bit hard now with all that silt in the back as the creek. It seems like it's silted up quite a bit. I'm sure over years.
Yeah.
It would really be nice if whoever is responsible for that lake could kind of go back in there and dig it out a little bit. It would be, yeah. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that would be pretty sweet. So real quick, you do not have to give me your best pattern.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say we're in the fall and getting ready to transition in the winter. So you're fishing Yahoola.
Right.
What would be your secondary go-to fall winter pattern on Yahoola? If you were fishing a tournament there tomorrow and then say in 2 months.
Anytime, whether it's spring, winter, summer, fall, I'm fishing Yahoola. I'm always going to have a jig rod on I'm going to have a jig in my hand. 90% of the day, 90% of the tournament. The main reason for that is, in my opinion, their main food source is crayfish that wash in from the creek. One thing I'll say about Yahoola and a lot of these reservoirs, for that matter, is anytime you can find and fish current, you're going to increase your odds of catching bigger fish.
Right.
Because, a lot of people, I hear a lot of folks say that don't fish those reservoirs because they compare them to a farm pond. And I hear about, you farm pond fishing. Well, you don't ever see them out here on tournament day,
Right.
But because it's tough. These reservoirs are just as tough, in my opinion, as any lake around here. Or, it's tough to win these tournaments. So for me, if I can find current, I love fishing any kind of current. And whether it's a little creek coming in somewhere, whether it's a big river coming in, anytime I can find current, that to me is when that jig really shines, because as that water's coming in, moving in, it's washing those crayfish down, especially after a big rain or something that we've had. It's washing so much food, so much bait in. Those bass will just run up in that current and just gorge while they can. Versus being out in the middle where there is no current. It's just kind of dry heat, nothing going on, hoping that a bait fish runs by they can chase. So for me, if I'm fishing anytime on Yahoola, I'm fishing current, I'm fishing with a jig or like a shaky head, spinner bait, something of that nature. But
finding the current.
Yeah.
And that makes sense because I have only caught a few fish right out in the middle of Yahoola. There's a few there, but there's few and far between. And the only reason we get stuck out there is because everybody else has got the good spots.
Right.
So, well, you said I was going to ask you about a spring-summer pattern on Yahoola, but you've kind of, said you're going to throw a jig on that.
I'm going to throw a jig.
All right, well, that makes sense.
And I've told people, and to say you're going to throw, there's one thing I've learned. There's a lot of different techniques when it comes to jig fishing. Because I've had a lot of friends that was asking me, questioning me over the years, how do you catch them on Yahoola? And I tell them, fish a jig. And they're like, dude, we fished a jig forever, but we can't catch them. Well, you're fishing a jig wrong.
Right, yeah. And that must be me.
There's different techniques, different ways to fish a jig. And so that's something that I had to learn by doing a lot of research on jigs and crayfish. Research crayfish a lot. And how they move, how they act, their colors, because that's another thing, matching the jig to the color of the crayfish that they're currently feeding. And that time of year, what color the crayfish look like is big.
That's some good information right there. That makes a lot of sense. So let's move to lake number 2.
All right.
And this is another lake that I have fished 2 tournaments and then 1 pre-fish time with Josh, and it's Cedar Creek. In Hall County. I looked it up today. It's 143 acres.
Right.
I thought it was bigger. I guess because of the length of the lake. It seemed to me like it's, but the body of the water is 143 acres.
Right.
But it fishes big in certain spots, and it fishes like a farm pond in certain spots.
It does.
It's many different lakes in one.
Right.
Okay, so let's go ahead and same question.
Mm-hmm.
We're going into the fall and the winter.
Right.
And I'm asking you, man, Scott, I got to go down there. I got to catch 1 fish. You going to stick with the jig on Cedar Creek? Or
No.
Okay.
I know. I wish I could.
Right.
But the thing with Cedar Creek is a lot of folks listening know that fish a lot. It has changed drastically over the past couple of years.
Okay.
Used to, when I first fished it about 3 to 4 years ago, I guess it was, you could not fish pretty much anything within 15 feet of the bank because it was just solid grass.
And that was the way it was the very first time I ever went there.
There was grass mats everywhere. It
was crazy.
Your trolling motor would just be covered in grass. And trying to fish anything other than like a top water weedless type bait or a drop shot,
right,
was almost impossible. You're just going to bring back a salad every time you reel back in. But I don't know I'm not sure what they did. I heard that they had sprayed something out there, killed some of it back. So, but a lot of that grass is gone now. It's not like it was. So it's actually, I caught fish when it had a lot of grass on it. I actually caught more numbers than I have recently, but recently I've caught bigger fish.
Right.
And so yeah, Cedar Creek going into the fall to winter. It's kind of like anywhere. I mean, the fish, the bass are coming out of their summer lethargic, deep water type stage. They're wanting to feed up for the winter because they know the cold water's coming. So they're going to be pushing bait fish back into the shallow areas, shallow flats, anywhere shallow that they can corral them and wolf gang them and push them back in there. So if I'm fishing Cedar Creek fall to winter, I'm gonna be back somewhere where it's really shallow. And I'm going to be fishing some top water stuff. I'm going to be fishing some swim baits. That's kind of what I'm going to be looking for. I'm going to be looking for those, looking on my graph too, to find those bass that are out in the mouth of that cove or the mouth of that creek, and they're going to be just sitting there waiting to push, because Cedar Creek does have a lot of bait in it. That's one good thing.
I was getting ready to ask you, what kind of bait does Cedar Creek have, and it hasn't been stocked with anything?
Not that I'm not real sure if it's been stocked or not. I know there's a lot of shad out there. There's a lot of real small shad, about the size of your thumbnail. But they'll be in big balls, and there's a lot of fry from bluegill and crappie. There's some huge crappie out there. Tournament a couple weeks ago, my friend caught like a 3-pound crappie. This thing was a monster. Big.
What did he catch it on?
I think what did he catch? I can't. Maybe a spinner bait.
I don't doubt that a bit.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've caught some big crappie on Latham on spinner bait, and just fishing for bass.
Right.
But yeah, that'd be what I would do this time of year. I mean, there are a few places out at Cedar Creek that jig fishing can be good, but again, I'm going to use a top water type lure if I can, like say a popper walking type bait. And I'm even gonna go finesse and use a wacky worm. I'm gonna go finesse and use a finesse type Carolina rig. Maybe even with a swim bait on it. And just try to get those bass that are pushing that bait back, try to get them to feed up on.
Did you know that lake had spots in it?
I did until a couple of years ago. I caught the first one. Yeah, I was like, dang, there's spots in here.
I fished it with my good friend Tim Wyatt, and Tim's a heck of a fisherman and all that. So he was actually spending the day showing me some stuff too.
Right.
And set the hook on one and brought it in, and daggum, it's a spot. Yeah. And I did not know there were spots in Cedar Creek. So.
I don't believe they were stocked.
Seems like they're never stocked anywhere, but they always show up, don't they?
Spots are fun to catch. Laniers full of them.
Right.
People, I'm sure a lot of people go out fishing Lanier, catch them, bring them back and put them in these different places, which I enjoy catching spots too.
Yep.
And I've actually caught a spot at Yahoola, one.
Really?
But, that's the only one I've ever caught. And I don't know if it was just one somebody had done that with, brought it and thrown it in. But I knew Cedar Creek and Latham both had pretty good population spots.
Yeah, Latham's full of them. So let's go to the mighty Latham.
Yeah.
Since for about the past, I would say 3 or 4 years, it's been the lake everybody wants to fish.
Yeah.
Hopefully it can sustain the pressure.
Yeah.
But right now, if somebody's throwing a tournament and Latham's all, you let them choose, you're always going to get the votes from Latham. You're going to get the votes for Latham. So I'm real familiar with that lake. But for those that don't know, Latham Reservoir, it's about 17, 18 years old now. It sits mostly in Dawson County, but it's right on the Dawson County, Cherokee County line. Mm-hmm. And out towards it's as close to Ball Ground as it is to Dawsonville.
Right.
And Tate area, Marble Hill, that area right there. It's run by Cherokee County. The purpose of the lake is to keep the level of the Etowah. That's what happens. So Yellow Creek runs into Latham.
Right.
And as it goes out, about a mile down through the woods behind my house, it empties into the Etowah River. Well, somewhere in Canton, and I've never seen it, this is what I've been told, there's a river gauge.
Okay.
And so they monitor that, and during a drought or something like that, or for some reason, if that gauge starts registering low, they can release water out of Latham. So that's the purpose of Latham.
Right.
Now the real purpose of Latham is fishing. That's for us. So to me, Latham is 3 lakes in one.
Yep.
And I like to say you've got what I call the lower lake, which is the boat ramp area and the big body of water.
Right.
You've got the upper lake, which is basically from the marina up, that dog leg that it makes.
Yep.
And then you've got what I call the farm pond, which is basically under the culvert.
Right.
Like that.
Yep.
So I know you fished it.
Yeah, I have.
What's your favorite spot on that lake? And I include the waterfall in the upper end of the lake. So the waterfall area is the upper end of the lake to me.
Upper end of the lake.
Upper end of the lake. I think that's everybody's favorite. I was told that, and I don't know if it was DNR and whoever it did, but I was told that when you take a sample of water from Latham and you take a sample from the boat ramp, you take a sample from up near the waterfall, the upper end of the lake, and you compare the plankton or the photo, the little bitty things in the water that the brim eat, that there's twice as many in the upper end of the lake. That the water is so much richer in the upper end of the lake. And I think that's why the fish tend to stay up there. Latham has got the spots. It's got some big spots in it. Not linear yet, but it has some big spots. If Shane Dover was taking a guy out to fish tomorrow on Latham, what would you do? What would you show this guy? And you can catch him in Latham many different ways. So nothing really is wrong, but how would you go about it?
Spinnerbait and a jig.
Spinnerbait and a jig. You don't throw them 5-foot-long spoons like some of these guys do? It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, and it's one of those things where you almost need those high dollar graphs. I mean, just because you see, I've tried it out there. I've tried jigging spoons. I've tried flutter spoons, and I thought I felt it hitting the fish, but I wasn't getting any bites.
Right.
And it's another place that's good for drop shotting on certain areas of the lake. But for me, the current, man, it's hard to beat that current.
It's very hard to beat that current.
And you get back in there with a jig and a spinnerbait on some of those old standing timbers and stuff. I mean, one of your guests coming up, Chris Gayton, was fishing SWAT tournament out there, man. Right in front of him, he pulled. I was working my way that way slowly, and I saw him and his partner come in, and I said, "Oh, he's gonna catch this fish." And sure enough, he caught a 7-pounder right there, right on those trees, man. And I was like, ah.
For those of you who don't know Chris Gayton, let's go ahead and introduce him before he ever gets here. He is one half of the state championship, what we would call the Georgia TEC. He's one half of the winning boat of the state championship.
Excellent fisherman.
And is one of the best, most consistent fishermen that I know. When I pull up to one of these tournaments, I kind of look to see who's there, especially if the word open is in front of this tournament. Because if open is in front of this tournament, you're going to get every ringer in North Georgia that fishes these lakes. And so I see guys, and I'm just going to start naming out some guys that people will know that are just, when I see Geiger and Randy, Michael Geiger, I know they're going to finish the top 5 every time.
Yep.
If I see, Tim White.
Yep.
Tim White's going to be top 5 every time.
Mr. A-Rig.
Mr. A-Rig. Religiously Mr. A-Rig.
Yeah.
And
wears them out on it, too,
and wears
man.
them out. And was very nice enough that I'd never thrown an A-Rig. Never caught a fish on an A-Rig. Was very nice to teach me some of his, not all of his secrets.
Right.
Because no good fisherman teaches all his secrets.
Not at all.
But he did teach me some things about the A-Rig that since then I've been able to actually catch fish on the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I see Chris Gayton, I'm just like, man, I'm
tough to beat.
I'm donating money.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter who his partner is.
No.
Just this past weekend, and which by the time this podcast gets out and gets online, it would be a few weeks past. But he just fished a tournament, open tournament on Latham this past weekend that I fished in. It was a Relay for Life tournament.
Yes.
And I saw him. Merrick was there. Some other guys. A lot of popular, local guys that I knew were going to be good. And I see Chris Gayton, and I'm like, well, all right. What we do now is we donate our money and just see how many pounds they catch.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So we come to the weigh-in, and you just wait. And I see guys catch, they're bringing in decent. It's hot. It's this time of the year. Latham is like any other lake. You don't get the huge sacks like you do in February or March. So everybody's weighing in, 7, 8 pounds and all that. Yeah, here comes Chris, and his partner's Aaron. And I wonder, is it Cole? I might have that name wrong, Aaron Cole. He fished with Tim White last year. And
I think, yeah.
Is it Cole?
I think it is.
If Josh was here, Josh knows all these guys.
Yeah.
I can't even remember family members' names, but Josh knows everybody. But I saw them too, and so here they come, right at 13 pounds.
Dragging their bag of fish.
Every single time. And it's just like, what's the guy do? And he's great.
He's got them figured out.
He's got them figured out.
Yeah.
But he's very humble, and he's a very nice guy.
Great guy.
He's not one of these guys that won't talk to you.
No.
And he is going to be a guest on a podcast here. We're actually going to record his next week.
Yeah.
So he's a great guy. One thing he said, and maybe you can kind of talk about this too, is the bass that he brought in, and several of the other competitors have brought in at Latham were lengthwise very, very long. If the same fish were caught in February or March, they'd be 8 or 9 pounders.
Right.
But because they were caught now, man, they were skinny.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say they fish look sick. He proposed an interesting theory. Mm-hmm. Let me just kind of pick your brain with this. He thinks that the type of shad that is put in Latham, and Latham stocks.
Okay.
They stock. Latham stocks. For anybody that doesn't know, that $5 fee that you pay, the parking fee at Latham,
right. Mark
is actually allowed to turn around and put that back into the lake. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, so the fish feeders that you see,
right,
and the shad that's bought, the catfish, there used to be some huge channel cat in Latham.
Right.
Some kind of disease, I don't know what it was, killed a bunch of them out. They were able to restock it with catfish, and those catfish are now growing. But that's one of the cool things about Latham. Everybody pays that $5, and they're like, man, that's just, what's this for? It goes right back into the lake and all that. So, but he was thinking, his theory is that these big bass are chasing all these, because everybody knows the fish school on Latham, that these big bass are expending so much energy chasing a smaller bait that if they would turn around and buy, say, a gizzard shad or something and stock it with gizzard shad, that these fish would be able to maintain their weight.
Their body mass, right.
And so what do you think about that? That's
I agree. Yeah, that's, I've noticed a lot, like, see, where was I the other day? It may have been Latham. No, it was Cedar Creek. We, my partner and I were fishing, and we had a bass. We saw a little shad that just shooting all over the water. And here's a bass behind it, just chasing the fire out of this thing. And I was like, man, that's an awfully small shad. And that bass, I mean, for a good, I'm probably exaggerating, but it seemed like 15 minutes. We just kept seeing this bass just chase this shad all over the place. And I said, man, one of them's got to wear out in a minute.
Right,
And so, you saying that, I can see where that could come into play.
And that's where a guy like, Chris, you see him catch fish, but also when he speaks, you listen, that kind of,
Oh, yeah.
And I know some of his buddies will rag him a little bit and he ain't that smart. No, but that's kind of smart, just things like that a good fisherman notices.
Yeah, you have to be competitive. You have to, take in as much knowledge as you can, as much information as you can. You have to be a listener more than a speaker, really.
Right.
That's one thing that's helped me is I learned even fishing these tournaments, like you were saying, when you see the names like Chris and Aaron Bland and Merrick and JV and those guys, I know that they're great fishermen, but I also know I can learn a lot just by watching those guys.
Gotcha. Yeah, you said Aaron Bland, and for some reason, for a second, I thought about the one I thought was Aaron Cole, but no, that's a totally different guy. So
Eric.
That's what I was going to say.
Another great fisherman. Great. It's if you see Aaron Bland or Jason Brown on Cedar Creek, you got your work cut out for you.
Got your work cut out. We talk about these guys, and it goes back to the TEC. the same group of guys every single time you talk
Right.
about that. What I noticed at the TEC was Tim White and Aaron.
Yep.
That I think is cold. God forgive me if it's not. I'll ask his
I believe
forgiveness.
it is. Yeah.
Okay, so he and Aaron, they weighed in first or second.
Yeah.
19 pounds and some change.
Wow.
And so there's 30-something boats or something like that in there.
Yeah.
Well, somebody knew that Chris Gayton and them had told them that they were close to 20 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So as they were bringing the boats out, they made Chris and them wait till last.
Yeah.
So you actually had some drama in
Oh,
this.
yeah.
So you had Tim and them, and here comes Chris, and I'm watching the weigh in, and I mean it's ounces, 20 pounds to 19.8 or whatever. I mean, but it was like it really was the first time on an electric tournament weigh-in that you were captivated.
Oh yeah.
Because I was calling the boats in up to the weigh-in, and I saw what they had, and I was like, oh, this is going to be close. This is going to be good.
Right.
And but it was, for the best fishermen.
Yeah, battling it out
amongst, however many other boats that were there, and there were some killer weights, brought in on hard labor and all that. But yeah, you're right. So, a couple more things that I want to get with you before you have to go. One of the big things that I've noticed with you, and I wish more guys are doing it. Some guys are getting into it. You do a good job with it. Is the social media aspect.
Right.
Okay. So first, tell me about the Dover Adventures. That's the smaller of the two groups you got. So that's more the personal one. Is that?
Well, I originally created that. It's kind of a funny story. I used to put everything on my personal Facebook page, and I was so excited about getting into bass fishing and catching fish and putting pictures up and promoting, what I caught it on and where I caught it. And my wife said, the only thing keeps popping up from you on my Facebook page is just fishing.
Right. Absolutely. Is this all he does?
So, right. Yeah. So I thought, well, maybe I should create my own little fishing page, and put all my fishing stuff on that, and then keep, family and personal stuff on my personal page.
Gotcha.
So that's why I created Dover Fishing Adventures. And so the people who were interested in kind of, how I fish, what I fish, why I fish, why I chose some of the sponsors that I have and reached out to them. And so that they could have somewhere where that's all detailed. And if they want to promote some of their stuff, that's fine. I don't mind, just kind of a little open public format to showcase, fishing. And so I'm very thankful for all the supporters and members that I have on there that like my stuff, and hope I can teach somebody can learn something from what I post. And
well, you do a good job, and that's one of the things I noticed. You actually on the page will tell people, Now, granted, sometimes it's one of your sponsored things, but you'll say, I caught this fish on a Georgia Blade XYZ.
Right.
On this line, and this is what I was doing, and it was on this part of the lake.
Right.
And then on another part of the lake, I went with a certain type of shaky head, you name that. But you're very open with the information.
Yeah, I don't mind. I mean, it's a lot of folks keep it a secret. There is some stuff that I will keep secret.
Absolutely. You're not, because you have to.
I do still compete,
right, absolutely.
And I enjoy that, but it's a lot of guys know exactly what I throw. A lot of them fished with me. I have a lot of partners who have fished with me as co-anglers and all in the past who are boaters, and we're competitors.
Right.
They know how I fish. I know a little bit about how they fish. And but still, that it's just I enjoy it. I don't mind telling folks, showing them, helping them, because I want it to be competitive.
Right.
I enjoy the competition of it. I want somebody to go fish my spot and then leave, and I go right behind them and catch fish.
Oh, absolutely. It's a good feeling.
That's a thrill for me.
Especially if they are still in eyesight of you.
Exactly.
As you do
that's when you try the hardest.
I absolutely get it. Unfortunately, I'm generally the guy that leaves the spot, and I turn around and I'm like, goodness grief, look at him. Okay, so tell me about the Real Lake Lanier group.
Now that I created that page. I won't go into the full details as to why, because I don't want to talk bad about other Lanier fishing group pages.
Gotcha.
The description of my page kind of, you can read between the lines and see why I created that page.
Gotcha.
But being living 10 minutes from Wahoo Park on Lake Lanier and fishing Lake Lanier a pretty good bit, especially with the BFL circuit, with FLW and all, I wanted to have, a page where not only my sponsors, but anybody who has anything related to do with Lake Lanier, whether it be a guide service, a bait service, a marina, the mechanic that services, works on bass boats, whatever, could have a place they could come and we could all kind of network together. We could post, they could post upcoming tournaments on Lanier. They could, somebody who's never fished Lanier could ask a question about, hey, where's a great place to go this time of year to catch catch crappie or catfish, whatever.
You almost said crappie,
yeah,
didn't you?
I know.
You almost
I did.
did.
I was up in Maryland too long. But so that's why I created it, and it's been a big success. I mean, of course, I'd love to have more followers and all on there, but I think I'm up to a little over 500 now. And man, that's great.
No, that's awesome,
Yeah.
especially being and that's kind of like with you're wanting to do the same thing we're wanting to do with Fish North
Right.
Georgia.
Right.
Is we want to be the place where everybody can come and ask a question and not
Exactly.
feel like they're going to get blasted.
Right.
Because we all know on Facebook, especially
Yep.
on some of
Yep.
these countywide discussions or a certain lake, you'll get this poor guy who doesn't have much experience on it. And he
Right.
asks a question.
And he gets hammered.
He gets hammered.
Yeah.
And people are just jerks
No, they are.
when it comes to that. That's just straight up honest, and you feel bad. You feel bad, and unfortunately, most of the time, the people that are hammering them, they're not the ones that need to be answering the questions and stuff like that.
Right, they're just trolls, as they call it.
Right, they want to hear themselves speak or read their things, and then they sit back, and there's a reason why we say some of these people are in their mom's basement typing and stuff like that.
Yeah, true.
And it's just terrible, and it really and hunters deal with the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
On a hunting
Yeah.
page, this poor guy goes out. He's having a great time. He sees a spike or something, and he's
Right.
got the tag, and he's going to eat the thing, and he shoots it, and he takes the pictures, and he's just proud, and he should be.
Right, absolutely.
And you just get hammered by this group that's like, Georgia's never going to be like Illinois if we kill all the little bucks.
Right, it's never going to be like
It's never
Illinois, period.
We don't have the
We don't have the
cornfields.
forage for it.
Good night, we don't. Have you seen a raccoon in Illinois? I've been up there. The raccoons are 50 pounds. That's because they just eat, and eat. But
Right.
I feel terrible. But that's kind of like what we want to do. We want to be that place, and I understand that mission as well, and I totally appreciate that. So, real quick, the future of fishing, I think it is what it is. But let's be more specific. The future of the electric only fishing trails. Do you think we're going to be able to keep it going? Will there be enough lakes to sustain it? Because I think they're going to build more, or do you have suggestions as to what can make it better? Anything on that?
Good question.
Yeah.
Well, it's in the past, it's even since I started fishing electric, the competitiveness has just increased every year. It goes, almost monthly. It seems
it
like
does. Yeah.
there's so much new technology out there now. There's so many, Elco's got some great motors. A lot of other companies are jumping on board with electric outboards. Even battery manufacturers are jumping on board with electric outboard. Making specific batteries for that.
Yeah.
And so financially wise, it's getting costly, but at the same time,
ask my wife.
yeah, definitely. From everything, from rods. Nowadays you buy a $200 rod and reel setup, and you've got a cheap setup.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. You thinking, man, I just spent $200 on a rod and reel. Some of these guys are spending $7 and $8.
Exactly.
And so it's that aspect of it, the competitiveness of that is what's hard. It's hard to compete with.
Yeah, and that goes in line with what we talked earlier with your graphs and your sonar.
Right. Yep, everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a $2,000 boat, a $2,500 graph.
Yeah, that's true.
What would you, let me put this out there. What would you think of an electric-only trail with no graphs?
Well, that's how we grew up.
No electronics.
Yeah.
How do you think that would change some of the fishing? Some of the guys that are strong to some of the guys who are, better than average. If you went out and nobody had, not even a depth finder.
Right.
You're going out just blind. You know the lakes, but you go out blind. What would you think about that?
I would love it personally, because that's how I. And to be honest, one of the only things I currently use my fish finder for is water temperature. Right. And how shallow am I? If it's muddy water and I can't see the bottom.
Right.
But I do a lot of my contour determination with a jig, and
good point.
That's my best depth finder. And I can find ledges, I can find drop offs right next to the bank. I can determine whether it's a soft bottom, hard bottom, and I can do all that with my jig. And make mental notes of it, so I learn the lake that way. I can find brush piles with a jig, something dragging across the bottom, even a Carolina rig. So I would personally like it. I would like to have a trail that was just no depth finders.
I think that'd be awesome.
I do too.
And I think it would bring the cost back down.
It would.
For some of these people just getting into it. And it would really, to me, now again, some of the guys we've mentioned earlier may still catch 100 pounds of fish.
Oh yeah, they would.
But I think it would showcase your fishing skill
right
more than your, reading that contour.
And I tell you, it's funny because a couple years ago, I fished some tournaments with Southern Outcast. Josh Griffiths, great host, runs a great club. I'd never fished with them before and never fished some of the lakes that they fished. Varner being one, Sandy Creek, Bear Creek, a lot of those. I'd never fished them before. So I wanted to. We had a tournament down in Varner. I had never seen the lake. Nothing. Went down there for the tournament day, put in, Josh had told me a few basics about the lake because he and I are kind of friends. He shared some basic information about the lake. I got there, and my partner and I, when everybody took off, we didn't know where to go, which way to go or nothing. We sat there and waited for everybody to go so we could kind of pick a spot where somebody didn't go.
Right.
We didn't want to interfere with nobody. We never left side of the boat ramp and won a tournament. First time ever on the lake. just never used a graph. We just went by instinct fishing and caught enough to win the tournament.
Well, see, I think that instinct fishing is missing.
Right. It's the technology is taking a lot of it away.
It's taking a lot of people's intuition or however you want to say it, instinct, and it would be nice. Mm-hmm. Hint, some of these guys out here.
Right.
If we could go to, or let's say, let's have a few tournaments where that graph can't be on.
Yeah.
Or at best, the old dial, that whatever that was, remember it was a circle and just had the thing, so you can tell how deep you are and you can tell.
The old Lowrance.
The old Lowrance.
Yep.
That was, you remember that was high technology back in the day.
Right.
Before I let you go, I can't help but notice all the names on your shirt.
Yeah.
I can't help but notice, on your pages, you are very loyal to a certain group of companies.
Yep.
So before I let you go, I want to give you the opportunity to tell everybody about your sponsors.
Awesome.
About these companies, and just what makes them what they are, or how they've helped you, how you got, just whatever you want to say about them. I just think given that you've done the legwork to, partner with these,
right,
that they deserve some time to hear their names by you. And like we've heard Georgia Blade.
Yeah.
We know how you feel about Georgia Blade. And you can still talk about them some more. So don't think you can't bring them back up. But let's take a few minutes before we close And let's hear about these guys.
All right. Well, going into it, I'll tell you a little backstory to why I have who I have. One thing in fishing tournaments and stuff now that you hear a lot about is pro staff. Everybody wants to be on a pro staff of some sort, of some kind. And there are so many companies out there now that offer a pro staff program almost to anybody. If you can pick up a fishing rod, you can be on a pro staff. They'll give you a discount on purchasing their products. And but to me, I had some like that. Honestly, I was gullible enough in the beginning when I first started. I thought, hey man, that's I want to get on with that and I did those. And I'm not knocking them. But to me, the more I got to thinking about it, the more I thought, why am I going to promote a company or a product that I really and truly don't know nothing about? I mean, I know the name of it. I know what it looks like, but I don't know any backstory of the company. So, and another thing is, if I'm fishing in Georgia, I'm buying a Georgia hunting and fishing license. I'm buying my trolling motor and equipment and everything right here in Georgia. Why not keep my money in Georgia?
Good point.
So I'd heard about Georgia Blade. I'd heard about Castaway Baits with Mr. Jim Farmer. I'd heard about Lanier Baits. And I thought, I hear a lot about these, and I did some research on them. And I learned that Georgia Blade made jigs, spinner baits, buzz baits, jigging spoons, striper jigs, underspins, just a ton of different products. And I thought, man, I want to check them out and see the quality of them compared to some of the other companies, the other big box companies. So, and they were sold locally. Georgia Blade doesn't have their own store type website, but they provide their product to locations all across Georgia and even into Alabama.
Gotcha, yeah.
So I went to my local tackle store, which is the Outdoor Depot there in Gainesville. Purchased some Georgia Blade products.
And that's a good little store too.
It is.
It's a good little
great.
store.
The guys in there are very knowledgeable about not only for anything from hunting, shooting, rifles, guns, fishing. Really good guys in there. So I went in, picked up some products, looked at them, checked them out, bought some, put them through the ringer on different stuff, bouncing them off rocks and bending them and spinner baits and stuff. And man, they held up great. Caught some fish on them. Sometimes on spinner bait, if you catch a fish on it, the spinner bait just gets gnarled up, and then you never get it to run the same. You can twist and bend. But man, I've had such good luck on Georgia Blade. I mean, I've caught so many fish. I think at one time I was up to 40-something fish I caught on Lanier on one Georgia Blade spinner bait. And that's bending it back into place, lining it up, and it runs true and perfect every time. Skirt's still on, paint's still on, hook's still sharp.
And that's the thing, when people see these $1 spinner baits at the Walmart, there's a reason why they're $1.
There's a reason, exactly.
Yeah, okay,
yep.
So yeah.
And so I knew then that, all right, that's going to cover my spinner baits, jigs, buzz. But that if I can reach out to those guys, and if they would be interested in letting me promote their products and all, that would cover all that. So crankbait wise, I'd always heard of the Emerald Popper on Lanier. Everybody talked about the Emerald Popper. I was like, what is this thing? And I got looking it up, and I found Jim Farmer's Castaway Baits, from Castaway Bait and Tackle. So I got looking at what he does, and he custom paints crankbaits to match Georgia forage. Georgia baitfish, Georgia crayfish. He's got all these different crankbaits, topwater baits, whopper ploppers, different stuff that he paints, Sabills, that match the forage that our Georgia bass are eating so great. It's unbelievable. And so I bought some of the crankbaits and some of the Emerald Poppers, and saw the quality from down to the split rings to the hooks that he uses on these things. And the paint is just unbelievable. I mean, it's not like anything you're going to go to Walmart and pull off the shelf and cast this thing, expect it to run true. And Jim's does. I mean, he puts a lot of pride into his work. and they're excellent crankbaits. So that covered my crankbait side of my topwater popper type stuff, walking baits, and my crankbait. So I've got my spinner baits and jigs and that type of stuff, bladed stuff, and I've got my crankbaits covered if I can talk to those guys and get them, convinced to give me a shot.
Right.
So all I needed was soft plastics. So I'd heard a lot about linear baits. I'd heard Fruity Worms Rule. Heard it a lot. Seen some stuff on Facebook about, LJ catching some huge fish on drop shot. I knew it was one of my weaknesses, but I also knew he made, shaky head type worms, swim bait, swimmers.
Right.
Had his own line of hooks and all that he had personally tested as far as like a shaky head and a net head type hook that he had personally designed and put time in testing this thing to make sure it was going to work how he wanted it to.
Right.
And so I got the opportunity last year to go to the Geminar, they call it, a little seminar that they had here. They have it every January.
Is that the one he does with like 3 or 4 of the guys that are Lake Lanier experts or something like that? Okay.
It's Jim Harmon, Jim Farmer, and Jimbo on Lanier. The 3 Jims.
The 3 Jims.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I got you.
And if you get the opportunity to go, it's the best knowledge I have ever gained at one time at a sit down type atmosphere, listening to these guys tell the seasons of fishing. It is mostly based around Lake Lanier because all 3 of those guys live on and fish Lake Lanier and guide on Lake Lanier. But I took that same information to these other reservoirs, and it works just as good. It's not a spotted bass type thing. I mean, spotted bass aren't going to be the only thing that eats a shaky head or a crankbait.
Right.
You can take these same principles and the same information they give you and transfer it to your local electric only lake. And you'd be amazed at what you can learn from those.
You don't know how many times I've heard Latham fishes Lake Lanier.
Yeah, true.
Once you get on the points and stuff like that.
Yeah.
All right. So now you got your fruity worms.
I've got that. I've got my soft plastics covered. Now I always wanted to use a tungsten weight. You hear so much about the sensitivity of a tungsten weight versus a lead weight. And I'd bought some at local store, used them. And there's definitely a difference. But the problem I had was, the coating would wear off. I wouldn't know what size it was, and I didn't have a decent way to weigh them. I'm just looking at it and say, it's probably good enough. And then it ended up being too heavy. And as soon as my Texas rig hits the water, it's a huge splash.
Yeah, it is.
Scare the fish off. So I got to kind of looking around for a tungsten. Somebody that does tungsten I could get involved with. And Joshua Perryman, guy who used to fish the FLW Tour, I believe he's a co-angler. He fished Costas, lives over in Alabama, over by Lake Guntersville. Well, I guess he had the same kind of idea that I had. He was tired of buying, box store tungsten or paying extremely high prices for tungsten. So he pretty much gave up his entire fishing career at the time, purchased him a little metal building, started producing tungsten weights, worm weights, flipping with just little stuff and keeping the costs down. And he's grown huge now. I mean, the following he has, the product is unbelievable. They print the weight right on the weight. They print, how, and it's got a coating on it where it will not chip. It's insert free. It's the best tungsten weights I've ever seen.
Titan.
It's Titan tungsten.
Titan tungsten.
Right.
Okay.
And the prices are really affordable and now that they've got drop shot weights, they've got Carolina rigs type weights. He's even just recently come out with a Ned head that's a tungsten Ned head, which is going to be a game changer.
That's going to help me. Because
you can feel, imagine feeling the bottom of that tungsten versus a lead head.
Absolutely.
So that had me covered, as far as my local group of guys. So I just reached out to, and Jimbo on Lanier also was another, he's a guide. after attending his seminar and meeting Jimbo and seeing how personable he was and how much of a, down to earth, and he's just one of us. He just loves fishing, and he loves fishing on there. He knows on there like the back of his hand. He's an excellent guide. But when it comes right down to it, he's a fisherman. He's one of us, And so I really wanted to promote him. I wanted to see what I could do to help him out. So I reached out to those guys, and I told them, I said, look, I'm interested in promoting your product. I've tried them all. I'm really impressed by them. I'm not looking, I'm not wanting you to buy me a new boat or a new truck or nothing.
Right.
I just want to promote your product.
Right.
As a local fisherman here in Georgia, I would just be happy to promote your product for you. And a lot of them were surprised. Jimbo said, nobody's ever asked me that before.
Really? Are you serious?
Yeah, exactly. Which took me by surprise.
Wow.
But yeah, so then when you guys, once I saw Fish North Georgia, I said, man, that's awesome. Somebody who wants to showcase our local rivers and streams and lakes and stuff, and the footage from the videos from the drone and all of the local lakes. Like, man, that's cool that somebody would take the time to go to Yahoola with a drone and put out a nice video like that. I mean, that was really impressive. And I said, man, I got to do what I can for those guys.
Well, we thank you. That's awesome.
So, yeah.
It is, you should see the videos we got lined up.
Yeah, I can't wait, man. It's
for those that are out there, just to kind of give you an idea, look on something like Yeti Presents, and Josh likes to use these. They put out a series of adventure kind of, and they're short videos, but they're not like the 2 or 3 minutes. They're 8 to 20 minutes.
Right.
They actually have a story, and it's not just a hype video. There's a story behind it. So
yes.
We've got those planned, and Josh is amazing. For anybody that doesn't know, my partner is absolutely one of the best I've ever seen behind the camera.
Yes,
and
by far.
He's got the eye, he's got the talent, and he's very humble. He doesn't like it to make, he doesn't want us to make this about us.
Right.
But I got to promote my partner.
Oh yeah.
He can't shoot straight and kill a deer, but the man can. He's going to get me for that. He'll probably delete that out of this. But the man can film.
Yes.
So we appreciate that like that.
Yeah, my wife she's from Colorado. So when I saw Josh posting where he was out doing some filming out in Colorado, I mentioned her on Facebook. She saw that and she's like, man, that's awesome. And then she got to kind of looking at Josh's his credits, and she said, hey, he's in the same union as my brother.
Yeah.
So they got some stuff in common there.
He's not somebody out there with a Walmart camera.
No, he is very good.
He's good.
Yes, he is.
And he's going to be very mad at me for promoting him on this. And all that.
He deserves it.
He does deserve it. He does deserve it. So, listen, Shane, I tell you what, for the first podcast that we've ever done, I don't think that I could pick a better guest. And the reason I say that is because, we've covered everything from some personal stuff, your upbringing and all that, some fishing techniques, basically some of these lakes, you kind of, what you're looking for.
Yeah.
You have put in a lot of information that, to be quite honest, I'm thrilled. I don't know what to expect with this. We didn't know, but we asked the questions and you were very honest. You were very, forthcoming, and I appreciate it. And I think the listeners will. And I hope 3 things. No, I'll go 4 things. I don't want you to beat me in a tournament, but I want to wish you the best of luck. Of luck fishing.
I got to find new spots now.
You got to find new spots now. Right. Shane Dover's in the current. Right. If there's current, go look at Shane. He's throwing a jig. No, seriously. I wish you the best with that.
Thank you.
I appreciate how you talk about your sponsors. You know, so I appreciate that, and you need to get these guys involved with us so we can promote them too through you like that.
Absolutely.
I definitely want you back. I think it would be good for you to come back so that, let's say 6 months and see where we're at.
Yeah.
Let's see. And, you're knowledgeable. You're very knowledgeable, and you said a lot of things today that I think will help somebody out there, maybe not beat you.
Yeah, well,
but maybe
it's not hard here lately.
Oh, buddy, trust me, I understand. But man, I really appreciate it, and I thank you for coming again.
Hey, I'm glad to be here, man. I'm glad you invited me. my first podcast too, you know, so this has been an experience for both of us. But
and I think it's been pretty good.
Yeah, I was worried that I was going to sound like a country bumpkin. I'm sure I will, but
that's all right. I would say most country boys fish. So
yeah, that's true.
You know, but man, I appreciate it. So
hey, thank you.
Guys, thanks so much for tuning in today. I really hope you learned something that will encourage you to get outside and go fishing. In the meantime, head on over to Facebook and Instagram at Fish North Georgia, where you can connect directly with us. There you're going to see upcoming guests. You can get involved in some of the discussions that we have going on. You can leave us ideas and names of people that you want to hear in the future. So guys, we really appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you next time.